His entire class got murdered in front of him, and he got blamed for it. This is what happened next. Meet Ganta. He's watching a video in class on his phone about an upcoming field trip. The destination? The only privately owned prison in Japan, designed as a massive amusement park that is run by the prison population, Deadman Wonderland. Wow, that's the name of the show! We're introduced to two of his classmates and lifelong friends, Mimi and Yamakatsu. They briefly discuss the upcoming trip and decide it will be a good distraction until their exams start. During class, Ganta hears a song that sounds familiar, emanating from somewhere nearby. He looks outside and sees a figure, clad in red, hovering outside the classroom window, even though...
We're on the 3rd floor.
My man's got that drip though, literally. The figure summons a hexagonal grid pattern around itself before unleashing it into the classroom, destroying everything inside. Ganta awakens to a nightmarish scene of death and destruction. Looking around, he seems to be the only one to have survived. Oh, except for Mimi, who actually seems to be looking alright. Never mind. This terrifies Ganta, who tries to move away but is cornered. The man in red then pushes a shard into his chest, making him fall unconscious. When he awakens, he finds himself in a hospital bed. He is quickly approached and identified by police, stating,
"You'll need to come with us."
Elsewhere, the news is reporting that out of the 30 students in the classroom, Ganta was the only survivor, and for plot purposes is now being charged for the murders. Back at the hospital, a slimy-looking, court-appointed attorney, seems legit, is going to be defending Ganta's case. As they're walking out of the room, Ganta pleads his innocence. His new attorney promptly reassures him that he's going to do everything within his power to help him. Everything's looking up. Maybe Ganta will finally catch a break.
The only recourse that we have is capital punishment.
Ganta, as he's being escorted away, understandably starts making a scene. This causes him to be attacked by people in the courtroom. Mimi's father is one of these people, and his phone falls out as he's punching Ganta. The phone, somehow, turns on, as breaking news shows hidden cam footage of Ganta talking with his attorney, admitting and bragging about the crime, saying no one will ever convict him because he's just a kid. Afterwards, his attorney approaches him, saying there's no point filing for an appeal now. Meanwhile, a young albino girl in a skin-tight bodysuit is atop a construction site, singing a sad song about a woodpecker, before exclaiming that Ganta is here. We cut back to Ganta in a prison bus, who is about to experience his school field trip a lot more intimately than otherwise planned. Once inside, we're introduced to Mummy, Makina, who is giving their initiation into prison life. Makina begins to explain how the collars around the inmates' necks work, when Ganta is crashed into by a man steering a cart. The man then helps Ganta put his things back into his knapsack, when Makina walks over and tells him to return what he stole. The man denies it.
Just remember that I gave you the choice.
The other guards run over to the injured man, saying to Makina that was overkill and calling for the paramedics. God, I wish that was me. Later, we cut to the office of Ganta's attorney, Mr. Tamaki, and it turns out this guy actually runs the whole of Deadman Wonderland. I feel like that maybe could have been a conflict of interest at some point. Mr. Tamaki is telling Makina that she can't just go around slicing people up, and she didn't even explain the proper rules for those on death row. She disagrees, saying there's no point when Ganta's accident is just around the corner. We cut back to Ganta, who is working on a construction site, when all of the guards seem to notice that something is up. Ganta sees a man welding, which makes him remember the good times, and the not so good times.
Somebody please just kill me.
I bet.
Silly boy! I know who you are!
The albino girl from earlier, whose name is Shiro, jumps down and proves to Ganta that he does in fact want to live, otherwise he wouldn't have dodged her attacks. She tells him she could tell he didn't want to die, because best friends know these things about each other. They're interrupted when an inmate throws a hard hat at Ganta. They think that Ganta is getting off light, considering he's doing the same work as them, even though he is on death row for the murder of all his classmates. Shiro pushes the man over, saying she knows Ganta didn't hurt anyone. The man tries to fight back, but gets his ass beat. Then one of them king hits Shiro in the back of the head with a shovel. Ganta tries to shove the man away, but gets headbutt to the ground. They all dogpile on him, and we cut away to Mr. Tamaki, looking over Ganta's file, saying he now has two choices. Either get crushed into the dirt, or...
become my shiny new plaything.
Duh. Wait, what did he mean by get crushed into the dirt? Oh, he meant literally. Confronted with impending death, Ganta becomes determined in wanting to clear his name, making the men in red pay for what he did to his friends, and wanting to live. The shard in his chest starts to glow red, as the giant ball from the building is falling towards him. Then, blood streams from the wounds around his body into the palm of his hand. He makes a projectile out of his blood, shooting it at the ball and destroying it. We cut to inside the prison, where an inmate is holding another prisoner hostage, demanding to be given candy. Turns out, if you're on death row in this prison, the collar around your neck is constantly injecting a poison into your body, and the only antidote is a small round piece of medicine in the shape of a normal sweet, which keeps you safe for 72 hours. If you happen to run out, then, well... That happens. We then get a short montage of several people taking their candy throughout the prison. Cutting back to Ganta, and we see him and Shiro are okay. As for the others, well, they give out hard hats for a reason, fellas. About a day later, Ganta is getting patched up by the prison's doctor, Rei Takashima, when she asks him if he's been taking his candy, saying it should be in his duffel bag. He says that he hasn't seen any. The guy who crashed into him the day before, who we find out is named Yo Takumi, says it must have fallen out when he hit him. Yeah, must have just fallen out and rolled away. Suddenly, Shiro drops in out of nowhere and tells everyone that they should enter the race as a team. Ganta is confused, but Yo explains that she's probably talking about the dog race, one of the big attractions at the theme park. It's basically like if Fall Guys met Squid Game. He goes on to explain that the prize for winning is 100,000 cast points.
The hell's a cast point?
Cast points are the currency that inmates use inside Deadman Wonderland. You can get pretty much anything you want, but nothing is earned for free. So if you've got no cast points, you ain't eaten. Ganta is unsure about entering, but Yo lets him know that just for participating, he'll get a red bean bun, and like that, he's in. They make their way over to the locker rooms for their entry into the dog race. Once inside, Yo remembers that he has something to give Ganta. As he's about to do so, everyone inside the room gets tense. In walks an absolute Sigma male, Kazumasa Kozuiji, an MMA champion 2 years in a row. Yo explains that the reason he's in here is because he actually got mad at an actress who didn't want to exchange emails with him. So really, he's just an incel. He makes an example of Ganta, then states everybody isn't giving him the proper respect. He gets to Yo and knocks him to the ground, then starts stomping on his arm, telling everyone if they back out, they'll have to go through him. Ganta watches as Yo gets beaten, saying to himself,
These guys are animals.
which is overheard by Kozuiji, who didn't quite like his tone.
I punched him in the chest as hard as I crumpled the kid.
Shiro comes in, somehow having found a cookie, and wants to share it with Ganta. As she walks in, she absentmindedly walks on top of Kozuiji's shoe. This enrages him, claiming that she looks like the girl he was simping for that got him in there. He goes to punch Shiro, but is blocked by Makino, who swiftly stops the show. The other prison guards announce that the time is up and they need to move into the arena. Yo is carried away because of his injuries. Before the start of the race, Ganta is reading through his prison handbook. It states that the antidote piece of candy has a cost of 100,000 cast points, exactly the number he will get if he wins. The race begins and Ganta is off to a motivated start. He gets to the first obstacle and barely dives underneath one of the swinging blades. He looks at his back and sees that he's been cut. Confused, he looks at one of the inmates that run past him, when other inmates see this and try to run off the stage, but are immediately gunned down by mascots armed with rifles. Ganta makes it to the end of the first stage and is shocked by the audience's reaction to the violence. The next obstacle to come up is a bungee jump, where if you pick the wrong rope, well... Ganta, thinking this is all too much, looks for a way out, when Shiro shows up and just sorta... I really hope this red bean bun is worth it for you, man. Turns out Shiro chose the correct rope for Ganta, which is lucky, because she did not choose the right one for herself. Good thing it doesn't matter for her though, because she's built different and sticks the landing. Next up we got an obstacle called Archer Alley. Man, I wonder how they got that name. Dodging the arrows is one thing, but if you fall off the side, you get a little toasty. Ganta is trying his best to avoid getting lit up by arrows when Shiro bumps into him in the air. He tells her to knock it off, but she looks like she's just having the best time. Kozuiji is getting through the course a little bit safer than everybody else. The next few courses go by pretty quick. We got a spiky deathball course, I don't even know what's happening here, a guillotine course, some sort of fiery log spin of death, and something with a chicken. The last course arrives, and it's just Shiro, Ganta, and Kozuiji. It's a battle royale. Whoever holds the ball and is the last person alive wins. The floor panels fall away, one by one, leading to giant spikes hidden underneath. Ganta does a pretty good job dodging Kozuiji, but eventually gets cornered. Kozuiji tells Ganta he lasted longer than he thought he would, but says he shouldn't be surprised, considering Ganta is the mass murderer, then says it's still pointless fighting against him, and he should just give up. This enrages Ganta, and he throws the ball at his face, knocking him away. He gives a small speech, which summed up is basically,
This place and its rules can suck my dick!
yeah, well said. Kozuiji charges him, but Ganta's got that good RNG, and Kozuiji can't get close. All of his tiles light up, and he makes a slide for the last safe spot on the edge. And there he goes. Ganta rushes over to Shiro, who is in a perilous spot. He finally notices all the damage she has taken over the course of the event, and that she got these injuries from protecting him from all the obstacles. As she falls, she happily passes the ball to him to let him win, and as he reaches for it, he extends himself off the tile to grab Shiro's arm and save her. She's confused as to why Ganta didn't take the ball, but he reassures her, saying they still get their bean bun. The dog race ends and there is no winner. Ganta decides that even though he doesn't get the prize money to buy the candy, he doesn't care. About a day passes and we cut to Tamaki in a meeting with the board of directors. They're angry about how far he went with the dog race yesterday, saying it was nothing but a public execution, and how some of the inmates that died weren't even on death row, so they now need to meet with the director. Tamaki reminds them that he's the one in charge, and not to forget about the secret they're keeping in the basement. Meanwhile, Ganta and Shiro finish eating some snacks. She says that they should always eat their snacks together from here on out. Ganta agrees and Shiro runs off after saying goodbye. Ganta somberly thinks to himself that they won't get to do that though, because today today, his time runs out. Later in his cell, Gunter is trying to write a letter to Mimi's father, but is failing to find the right words. The door to his cell opens, and it's Yo. He comes in, explaining that he's got something for him. He gives Gunter the candy, saying,
"If I hadn't been such a klutz, you wouldn't have lost years in the first place."
Yo thinks to himself about not knowing why the owner has such an interest in Gunter. It turns out Yo has been feeding Tamaki information about Gunter since his arrival, and has been rewarded with cast points. The reason why the dog race the previous day was so deadly was because Yo informed Tamaki that Gunter would be entering, and Tamaki sadistically wanted to see what Gunter would do when pushed to his limits. Meanwhile, Tamaki is in his office, doing very, very important business, when he receives a phone call stating that the Mother Goose system is offline. That can't be good. He races to an unknown location that is in disarray. An error occurred during routine maintenance, letting our dripped out red boy break free. We cut to Yo and Gunter getting ice cream. Man, they've got everything here. As they're sitting down and eating, Gunter suddenly shouts out in pain, the red shard in his chest glowing again as he falls to his knees looking up. He sees the man in red, high up in the clock tower, jump down, summoning an actual tornado as he's falling, which destroys everyone and everything nearby. Gunter, furious at seeing the reason he's locked away, and the murder of all of his friends, attacks the man using his blood as a projectile, hitting him dead center. The man in red, seemingly satisfied, flies away. Gunter runs after him before collapsing. Gunter wakes up in a hospital and recalls what happened to Shiro, who was a bit of a snack thief. He overhears another inmate talk about this being his second time he's seen the man in red, and rumor has it they've got him locked up in G Block. Gunter leaves to go and find it. We cut to the main headquarters of the prison. Makina is having a meeting with the prison guards about the incident. She doesn't believe the reports, saying that it was a terrorist bombing by a group of radical human rights activists. Instead, she thinks Gunter's somehow responsible, thinking that he stores a high-tech weaponry inside of himself. Not wanting to take any chances, she orders a code red and full lockdown across the prison.
She's so cool.
Meanwhile, Gunter and Shiro are running through the corridors of the prison, trying to make their way to G Block. As they're running through, they get stopped by the lockdown. Relatable. Conveniently, Yo appears. He says Gunter should report in as soon as possible, because if not, he saw what happened to him. Gunter explains he can't, as the man that killed everyone he ever cared about is in G Block.
All of them?
Pointing towards a map of the prison layout, Yo explains that G Block doesn't exist. The only blocks are from A to F. Yo insists that they go and check in with the guards, when Shiro points out that she knows how to get to G Block.
What are we waiting for?
Shiro gets all pouty, not wanting to take them anymore, when Yo interrupts them.
What is it?
Wait, just be quiet.
Yo explains it's one of the crowd control robots and is locking onto its target. Desperate, Gunter tells Shiro to get them out of there. She's still pouty at Gunter and doesn't really want to, but eventually relents and nudges the Great out of the way. They barely get into the vent in time before the robot charges up an attack and shoots at them. They get knocked farther into the vents by the explosion and have a small moment to breathe before the robot falls through the ceiling. Shiro points out an escape hatch that they start running to. As they're running, Gunter trips and the robot almost runs him over. Luckily for him though, Yo knows how to hit a devious lick, which shuts the robot down. Shiro leads them through the vents and they come out at the entrance of G Block. They don't get to look at it for very long because the robot is back, and with a vengeance. Gunter apologizes to Shiro and Yo, saying he shouldn't have dragged them down because it has nothing to do with them. The robot makes its way over to them while charging up its attack, when suddenly Shiro comes in with the clutch. Turns out, Shiro was more upset with Gunter than anything else right now, and the reason she was pouty earlier was because he said all of his friends were dead. What he should have said was all of his friends except Shiro was dead. The robot appears behind her, locking her in its sights. Gunter, remembering his ability from earlier, tries to save her, but he can't quite get it up. The robot starts charging up its attack when tendrils of blood appear from nowhere and slice the robot into pieces. A new challenger has arrived. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to subscribe so I know to keep making videos similar to this one.